then their comments, I think, is going to come um, up to the chat. Can you see comments?
Let me see. Right now I see private chat.
So if you go all the way up to the top,
Oh, it has to go to. Okay, gotcha. Okay,
yeah. So if comments come on, we can maybe answer those at the end um, if any questions come up.
that works for me. I
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna fix something, but that's okay.
Go ahead. We not. I mean, we live on YouTube, but we're not recording yet. This won't be in the podcast if you want to change something.
Okay, let me see if I can fix it. Never mind. I don't want to mess up the sound, so let's just roll.
Okay. All
I'm
right. You ready?
yes.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast. This is a video episode that's live on YouTube right now. So make sure that you go to the YouTube channel at Tatum Tamia to see the full interview. This is like past my bedtime. Tish, no, it's 8 p.m. I'm usually in the bed with my chamomile tea and a book like somebody's grandma by now. So I'm like recording live from my son's playroom. So y'all get to see some real behind the scenes. But we have a guest on this week's episode, friend to the show, listener favorite, Miss Latisha Carr. You know, I was about to call you Dr. Latisha Carr just now.
Speak it. Speak it. My aunt says that all the time too. So I'm like, I guess I got to do something about that.
I should have just let it flow because that's what popped into my head was Dr. Latisha Carr. So we're gonna go with that. I'm giving you an
Okay.
honorary doctorate right here on the Blessed
Thank
and
you so
Blessed.
much. Thank you so much. Is this from the Blessed and Bossed Up Bible School?
No,
Let
no, 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 no,
me
no.
speak that. I'm gonna speak that over you. You speaking doctorate over me.
Whoa, I'm dodging that one. I'm good. But welcome back to the show. I'm happy to have you here again.
I'm happy to be here, and I love this live video scenario. I don't think we've ever done this before, so I'm happy to be here. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, we got to upgrade. We're going into year 5, so it's time to take things up a notch. So we've been doing a lot more video. Last time you were on the show, I had to check. It was July or August, sometime in the summer of 2020. And we talked about the importance of the long game versus the social media game. And we had these conversations all the time, just people just grinding themselves into the grave and not really building anything sustainable. And so I've had you kind of on like a little speaker tour lately with the society, with the retreats and everything, talking about company culture. But I believe that really just lines up with the whole concept of playing the long games as entrepreneurs. So I want to first I want you to first explain to us just why it's important for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people in the beginning phases of their business to prioritize company culture.
Yeah, so I think just for those of you who have been listening to this podcast for 5 years, I've been on here a few times, and I think this is kind of like an evolution of what I always come on here and talk
Mhm.
about, which is kind of the core of it is taking care of the well-being of yourself, and then escalating that from the well-being of yourself into the well-being of your company culture, the well-being of your employees, right? So employee well-being and employee experience is important. And so it's kind of this evolution of how taking care of yourself impacts how your company grows. And I think the sooner you start thinking about that, speaking of long game, right, that ties in too, the sooner you start thinking about how you are treating your business now, and how you're treating the culture of your business now impacts the long game and the sustainability of both you as a business owner as well as your business, right? If you want to develop something and create something that lives far beyond you, then you have to start thinking about these things sooner than later.
Usually, when we hear about company culture, it's like the whole corporate compensation package to where you might get some time off to volunteer or um, hotel seating is a newer one or like you come dressed casually or things of that nature, but you hear about it more on the corporate side and you don't hear it in the instance of being something that entrepreneurs or solopreneurs specifically should think about. So like what does that just specifically looks like for a new entrepreneur? How do they wrap their mind around that?
Yeah, so I think first understanding what culture is, right? Company culture and what that looks like, and really kind of narrow it down. It just comes to basically how you do things within your company, what the values and the behaviors are within your company. And it just kind of creates the environment that your organization has. And so if you are thinking about it from the corporate standpoint, right? If you are a Fortune 500 company and you have, you know, 500 and plus employees, you may be looking at that from a different perspective than when you're an individual who is just now starting off building out your business, building out your brand. And that they may look different, but they still have the underlying, the same undertones of why does somebody want to work here, including you as a solopreneur? Why do you want to be in your business in the first place? Uh,
Mhm.
and what makes, what are the values of your organization? What's the values of your business? So I have friends who have nonprofits who I'm having this conversation with. Just because it's a nonprofit doesn't mean you shouldn't be thinking about this. Really, I've worked in nonprofits that had the worst company cultures, actually, right? The rate
Mhm.
of burnout in nonprofit organizations are really high. But thinking about this from the perspective of how would you want to be treated as an employee if this wasn't your business,
Mhm.
right? If you were going to work at this place every single day, how would you want to feel when you get there? And start thinking from that mindset. And that will help you to build your company culture because, you don't would you go to a job where you had to work 17 hours a day? Probably
Mhm.
not, right? And so kind of putting those things into play of what kind of company am I trying to build? And like we talked about before, Tatum, long game, you don't want to burn yourself out and burn yourself out of your purpose and burn yourself out of the thing you have been called to. So you have to start thinking about um, how do you want to show up every day within your business and how that eventually will show up for your clients and as well as your future employees as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that because it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, just how entrepreneurship has been branded as just this hamster wheel is what I like to call it, like where everybody is just grinding, you hustling, you securing a bag, all of these things. And I don't I feel that culture is something that's created whether you intend to or not.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important to be intentional about it. Because if not, if you do subscribe to grind culture, so to speak, then that translates into your business. Then you're unorganized, you're mentally all over the place, you're on that hamster wheel. So you're moving fast and not going anywhere. You're stressed out, all of these different things. And then, God forbid, you bring somebody else into the chaos. It's just going to be 10 times more hectic for you and for them. So, how mentally, because you're a resident therapist, so how mentally can the listeners really just divorce themselves from what they perceive entrepreneurship to be so that they can strategically build something that is sustainable and that's sustainable for them and also that lasts as a company.
So that's a good question. And I think that so a couple of things. So my first thought is, people in business, and if you subscribe to that grind culture, everybody talks about your business brand, right? And
Mm,
what your brand is and how to create a brand that and that you have a personal brand, whether you're trying to create it or not. People, what they think of when they think of you, comes across whether you're intentional about that or not with your company. If you don't intend to create a brand, your company ends up with a brand, and what people think about your company or your business, whether you're being intentional about that or not. And so think about that the same way with your company culture, because culture and brand kind of can go hand in hand,
mm,
where you're creating a company culture or a business culture. whether you're being intentional about it or not. So why not be intentional about it? Why not decide how you want to build out that culture for your organization, for your business, for whatever you're up to, right? For your life, what kind of culture do you want within your family, right? How do you want to do that? Because it's going to develop whether you're intentional or not. So I think the shift mentally is shifting to intentionality, and being intentional about what you want your life to look like, what you want your business to look like, what you want people to feel like when they come into your business, right? Because if you're burnt out, your customers feel that, your clients feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And so shifting the mindset away from, oh, this is something extra for me to be thinking about, or this is something extra for me to do, and tie it all in together and be intentional about what you're trying to create. And part of that is looking at the long game, right? And part of that's looking at, in the future, how would I like this to be set up? So as solopreneurs, the mental shift, I always say this, I feel like about everything, but the mental shift starts with the intentionality and what is your intention within your business.
Got it. So what about that person who is a faith-based entrepreneur and God told them to start this business, and they are just doing the Lord's work,
Yep.
and they just want to impact people and win souls and all of the traditionally Christian impact. They want to have all of that. Where do they start to kind of separate that? I don't want to say separate it, because you don't have to separate it to be intentional, but where do they start to more so just work their mindset around the executive part? Because this falls under the executive role. So how can they shift their mindset from the faith in the scripture to being practical?
So I would say you would be my case study for that, right? Because that's where you started out, and we have had conversations for apparently over 5 years. I didn't, I promise, I didn't realize it's been that long. But we've had conversations about that for a long time. So I want to ask you how you've been able to do that, because I think you have been intentional with the type of company culture you have been creating, and you are bossed up like nobody that I know. Like, if I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people who are in business. Tatum is the bossed up of them all, but also has started to be more, being more intentional about what you are creating. So I'm going to throw it back to you on how you've been able to do that.
Honestly, for me, it's just understanding that I know the assignment, right, that God has called me to do with Anchor Media. It's now my job to make sure that assignment gets carried out. And so a part of that job is not necessarily being so, in the prayer closet for hours, because I can't do that now. It's too much going on. I can't be in it for hours like I was when I first quit my job and wasn't nothing else going on. But more so for me is just, okay, I have this assignment, I have these skills. There may be skills that I don't have that I need to make sure that I'm learning and cultivating, because they're necessary for the fulfillment of that assignment. So I look at my job as the person who's running this company, as something that's necessary for me to do well in order for the spiritual side to get accomplished. Because if not, I wouldn't be reaching as many people as I'm reaching. So I might save 3 souls, or I could save 3 million. You know what I mean? So I can have a bigger impact by being more efficient at the job at hand, which is running the company. And so, even having the culture conversation, what's been big for me is that if I'm no good, how's the business going to be carried out? And so we, had these conversations a lot earlier on. And at some point it clicked. So I listened at some point. At some
I
point,
know.
at some point it clicked. And so for me, it really looked like setting set work hours. Like, we all know I go to bed. I'm an old lady. I go to bed. Okay. I will be up early. That's my time I prefer to, if I got to get more things done, I'll wake up early, but I'm going to go to bed. But having those set work hours, saying no to a lot of things, just being clear about what the vision and the plan is for the company, and making decisions based off of what the vision is and not how I feel. Those are just some foundational things that I started doing to just make sure that, and that's just for me, I'm not even talking about like the team, but those are like some foundational things that I started doing to just make sure I'm just stepping out aside of my outside of myself and looking at this baby that God has blessed me with and just making sure that I'm raising it right.
Yep. And I think that's exactly it, right? Because we get caught up in the passion of it, like the passion project and what God has told us, and seeing it that way. And then we get lost in that, right? And lose out on what needs to be done to really get this moving, right? Like, so I think exactly what you said, kind of those setting boundaries, knowing that you're going to go to sleep, knowing what your work hours are going to be. I literally use this example all the time, but if Target says they close at 10 p.m., they're not opening the doors for you at 10:01, 10:02, right? You're out of luck if you're not there by then. So the same thing should go for your business, even if you're a solopreneur. And I know it's harder earlier on because you do need to make money and you do need to figure out how your income's gonna come across. And you like Tatum said, you may have be in the season where you have to sit and you have to pray for long hours about what should I do next, right? But that's that's wonderful, and you should be able to give yourself the space to do that if you need that early on in your or early on as you're building your business. And
Mhm.
so there's absolutely nothing wrong with that being the season that your business is in. But again, going back to being intentional about when is God wanting to talk to me, right? And how can I make time for that? Because if you don't have any um structure in place in your business, and what if you need to, like, what if you really need to stop and pray about something and you haven't created the space for that either, right?
Mhm.
So you want to make sure that you're being intentional about those things. And like Tatum said, again, because we've been talking about this for 5 years, essentially, at least,
Mhm.
being able to set your boundaries for yourself personally, as well as within your business, setting set hours. That creates the culture, right? Like if you create a culture where the mindset is that you're always going to answer, then that's what you're setting yourself up for. Then your clients are going to expect you to always answer. Eventually your employees are going to expect you to always answer. You're going to create a culture where you're on call 24/7. Now, if
Mhm.
you want that to be a part of your culture of your business, right, that there's someone available 24/7, then set that up and make, plan for that. But early on, you want to think about the vision God has given you, and then planning from there, right? So, um, because you're a faith-based business doesn't mean that you can't have structure to your business, right? Like it doesn't, you're not just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. So, you do have to find some kind of structure that works for you and works for your business and for, the long term, the culture you're trying to create within your business.
Yeah, the scripture that comes to mind is, write the vision and make it plain. And so I think we oversimplify what make it plain means to where we think it's just, I'm going to write it down, making it plain meaning it's in English and it's legible. But no, I think make it plain also means make it functional, make it strategic.
Efficient,
Would you say?
efficient.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Make it efficient. Prepare because the vision is for an appointed time. So make sure your business is filed. Make sure that you have your hours of operations, your policies and procedures, and all of these things. There's so much depth, I believe, to making it plain that we don't go into enough. And I might do a whole episode on that because I feel like we don't go into that enough. We dumb down something that's supposed to be a little bit more elaborate because I believe God wants us to make sure we have these structural things in our business, specifically the culture. Because I mean, the Bible even says that I pray that you're in good health, even as your soul prospers. And so, as we're growing, we want to make sure that we're creating these conditions to where we're healthy, not just in our physical health, but our mental health, that we're resting and all of these things. So, I want to ask you for the entrepreneur who is in a that season or in that space of where they want to be and where they are. So they're in that waiting season, as we call it most of the time. how are they able to just get out of the emotions of being frustrated in that season to get to the work of building the culture?
You know what, that touches, so I had a thought on your at the end of your last statement, and it segued right into this question. And I think identifying the fact that these things take time, right? Building a
Mhm.
business takes time, building the culture of your business takes time, getting to what you are called to takes time, right? Like there's things that God has told me to do, I promise you, 10, 15 years ago, and I did not get to them until recently, or I'm just now getting to them, or I'm just now seeing how different things connect. And you have to be aware that when you're in that waiting season, and sometimes it's a very long waiting season, sometimes it's like, well, I'm waiting on this, but this thing is prospering, right? So
Mhm.
there could be multiple things happening at one time. But recognizing that these things take time, and that, you're not going to wake up one morning and everything be in alignment and everything be structured and your whole business culture will be done, right? Just because the night before you said that that's what was going to, that's the thing you prayed about and that's what was downloaded into your spirit. That doesn't
Mhm.
mean when you wake up in the morning, that's exactly how it's going to be yet, right? And so being encouraged that these things do take time, and that you're not the only one it's taking time for. It may look like everybody else has everything together. It may look like everybody else has their structures in place. It may look like everybody else's business is booming. One, you don't know what's happening on the back end and what chaos is happening within their business or within their life or
Mhm.
within anything. But being okay with that waiting, and recognizing that it takes time. But again, it takes time, but it also, you should be intentional about what you're doing with that time. Are you in that time frame, learning more about company culture and how you want to build it out, identifying what kind of, finding businesses that you think have great company cultures, and figuring out what's happening within their organization and how
Mhm.
they're making that happen, right? Are you studying to figure out, how a business like Anchor Media has taken 5 years, right, to get to the place that they are? It's not overnight, even if it feels overnight. So you can take that time when you're in that waiting season to be, I don't want to say productive. I'm starting to hate that word, honestly, but to be purposeful. There we go. To
Yeah.
be purposeful with that time. And I understand it gets frustrating. I truly understand that piece. But I think being, remember what your purpose is, being purposeful with what you're doing in that time frame, and being aware what your end goal is going to be, will help to get you prepared for that long term culture. Big organizations and big companies like Google didn't become Google overnight, right? Their company culture didn't become what it is overnight, right? It's a trial and error, as well, when it comes to like building out your company culture. You learn from what you don't like just as much as you learn from what you do right and what you do like, right?
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to use Tatum as an example. She sent me a message a few weeks ago, almost like, you know what? I decided we need to move this element of my life over here and make this a part of the business because it makes more sense over here. Well, you
Mhm.
learn that by trying and figuring it out, and figuring out what's not working or what's working, but it could be done more efficiently or more effectively. So I think in
Mhm.
that time frame, that's something important to like be aware of, and that doesn't necessarily stop, right? Like it doesn't necessarily stop just because maybe you got to that goal, because now you might be in a new waiting season for something else, something bigger, something else that God's amping up for you.
Yeah, and one thing I like about just the conversation of culture is that it changes as the seasons change. You know, how you show up, especially for solopreneurs, how you show up in your business, the hours you work. Like if you're an accountant, you have a busy season during tax time where you put in a lot of hours. Like there are just different seasons in different companies. But one thing that I've learned just as my company has grown and gone through different seasons is just one element that I personally like to keep top of mind is that it's not an overnight thing. Like this is a long game. Relax, Tatum. Like pull yourself back in, calm down. That, and also just giving myself grace to figure things out and not being so hard on myself. That's something I realized before I had a team, before, we reached certain milestones, that needed to be a part of my company culture, and the environment that I create for myself, is to have the freedom to make mistakes, to not get it right, and to just give myself a break sometimes, because I would be pulling my hair out right now if I didn't establish that earlier on. Because the problems that I have now, there's a lot more at stake. So if, payroll don't get made, so to speak, it's people's lives that are affected by that. It ain't just me no more. So it may sound good to have the growth, but the stakes are higher as well. I have seasons where I'm like, God, you're calling me to do bigger things and to do this. These things cost bigger checks. So you got to give me the bigger resources to be able to fund the things that you're calling me to do. And if I didn't create that culture of just being nice to myself, as you say, then that would have, I feel like I would have really been stressed out in this season and some of the more recent things that I've gone through.
I think the be nice to yourself is like from the first time we we did this.
And I always be nice to yourself, Tatum. Be nice to yourself.
It's true. And then, but because you started being nice to yourself, 5 years ago when you started this, now that means you're capable of being nice to the people who you employ and the people who are contracted with you and the people that your clients and your customers, right? Because if you weren't being kind to yourself and you weren't being nice to you in your solopreneur days, right, when it was all you all by yourself figuring it out, then you wouldn't be giving other people grace, right? Like, why? How many times have you, the global audience, right? How many times have y'all been in a situation where people are like, "Well, I figured it out, so you figure it out," right? Like, what they're saying is, I didn't give myself grace, and I forced myself to do it all by myself and not ask any questions. So you should be able to do it too, right? And so it comes back to knowing yourself, and self-awareness is. I talk about self-awareness all day long, every single day. Self-awareness is key as a solopreneur, and it doesn't matter if you're the self-awareness comes into play in all aspects of your business. It comes into play when you are talking about what kind of services or what kind of products you are offering, how much or how many or how long you can provide that service, um, sustainably for you as a solopreneur, right? How much can I give? Honestly, how much can I give, right? And so starting there as a solopreneur is, I mean, extremely important, because if you can't do it for yourself when you're in the CEO position that everybody wants to be the CEO, everybody wants to be, the boss of everything. Well, you can't do it when you're the CEO of just you. I don't know how you're going to do it when you have 5, 10, 15, 100, 1,000, however God multiplies you, employees in place, right? How will you give the person who's just starting out, who this is their first job ever, the intern, grace if you've never given yourself grace? If you never knew, if you never were, self-aware, how can you teach somebody else? Because a lot of the role that comes along with being in charge is training and onboarding and teaching other people how to do the work, right? So if you never went through that process of making mistakes, how can you be empathetic or supportive when you're teaching it to the next person that you're training to do the work that you no longer want to do, right? The whole point of you hiring people is to do things you don't want to do. So if you don't have that in you from the beginning, then it's going to be very hard to create a healthy company culture as you scale. And I think that most people want to scale their business, whether it's hiring more employees or having more products or having more services, right? Most people's goal is to scale. Well, before you scale, you need to start identifying things that you want to have in place within your business. So,
Yeah, I love that, because you don't want to scale chaos. You
what
don't want to do that.
I,
So,
I mean, I have really, I mean, my first job out of grad school was within this nonprofit organization that employed like probably 300 or 400 people. When I say you could tell the chaos was scaled, like they didn't figure it out at the beginning, And they just kept growing. And I see this all the time in nonprofits. It's just top of mind, but it happens in, all organizations, that you start off with a little bit of chaos. Whoever started this company or nonprofit or organization didn't quite have together, and they were like, if I just hire more people, it'll make it better. If I just get more people, it'll make it better. If I start building out more services, if I start offering more programs. Well, you wasn't doing well with the first one. And if you were doing well with the first one, you didn't take the time to learn how to build out the second one properly, right? And you can see in businesses that you go to, that you are a consumer at, when they have not figured out how to not keep scaling that chaos, right? Like, you go into certain stores and you're like, okay, they probably should have stayed like a little mom and pop shop, because y'all don't got it together here yet, or restaurants or places that I love. Like in DC, there's a restaurant that I love, but when you go to the second one or the third one that they've expanded, it's like the food ain't hitting the same, the service ain't the same, right? You're not getting Chick-fil-A service, you're getting like whatever they decide to give you at that particular one, right? Because they haven't figured out how to build a company culture out that is scalable, and that translates. Chick-fil-A has done an excellent job at that. Target has done a pretty good job at that, right? Like, you can name plenty of companies that you can tell, oh, they figured out how to make, if I walk into this one, I get the same experience or almost identical experience as if I walk into one that's, 100 miles away.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm going to ask you about that restaurant offline.
It's Black owned. I don't want to throw nobody under the bus.
I'm going to ask which location I need to be going to.
Go to the one in Maryland, child.
But something I was thinking about recently, because we're going to have our first full-time hire at the top of the year. And so, oh, thank you. So just building out like the offer and like the package and the job description and all of those things, it just made me, it was so easy to do because of the work that was done when I was a solopreneur. So something to be more practical, like traditionally jobs are, we call them 9 to 5. You work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. That was never the best. It works for me now because I'm a mom. Mm-hmm. But before, that wasn't the best work style for me, because I like structure with a little bit of freedom sprinkled in. Yep. So like, I need to know, give me the work hours, but also give me the freedom to just get it done when I get it done. And so, and I'll meet the deadline, but don't make me have to sit somewhere for 8 hours a day. And so I realized that culture for myself of feeling like I needed to be glued behind my computer all day early on, it just wasn't working. I was a zombie. I wasn't that productive. Half the time I wasn't even really doing anything, but I felt like I was doing something because I was sitting at my computer, as opposed to really giving myself the freedom to work on a task by task basis, and realizing that that's how I thrive, having a deadline, having a task, and I'll get it done when I get it done. I may wake up at 5 a.m. and do it, and I don't work again until the next day, whatever. And so just even thinking about that working for me, building out my company, I'm like, most people probably work better like that. And that's a better environment for people if you don't tell them they have to be sitting at their desk all day in their cubicle. If you say, look, you have a flexible work schedule is the technical term for it. You have a flexible work schedule. We work on a task by task basis. We work on deadlines. So as long as the job get done, I don't care when you work or where you work or anything. Work from wherever you want, whenever you want, as long as the stuff gets done at a certain time. That's a great culture for somebody to come in and work for a company, because they have the freedom now to do other things and pursue their own passions and go for a walk in the middle of the day, and ain't nobody checking for them and giving them a 15-minute cigarette break. I remember being at work like, so because I don't smoke, I don't get like a little break in the middle of the day?
Take a social media break. I'm going outside, I'm taking my phone, and I'm taking a social media break because y'all got your cigarettes and I got Instagram.
How do people that's killing themselves get to be out there taking a little break? I'm going out there too, and don't blow your smoke in my face. But really, that self-awareness was very, very beneficial for me early on. And I talk to people all the time, and I get offended a little bit and slightly irritated when people are always like, or sometimes people are like, well, Tatum, you have a team, so you can do da 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 da. And I'm like, do y'all not know? Like,
It wasn't what you shooting in the gym.
you know what I'm saying? Y'all don't understand. Y'all wasn't there when I was learning how to braid my hair on YouTube because going to get it done was not possible. Or being in the library because books are still free there. Like, come on, we started from zero here, okay? Probably the negatives because I had credit card debt. Don't don't act like I don't understand.
Paying business coaches, all kinds of stuff happening.
Me and you was right there together at random Bible studies in DC libraries, flipping through.
Because we were going through it, okay?
I remember I saw Tish like multiple times in like a month or so. We ended up in the same coaching program. And then I ran into you at that Bible study at the library. I'm like, oh, me and her need to be friends because she know the Lord.
I was literally breaking down. This is such a tangent, but I was like breaking down crying. And I can't remember her name, but she pulled me out and she prayed with me. And I remember, and I keep a little card in my wallet that says, money is the easiest thing God can give you. And that was however long ago that was that we were at that Bible study. I keep that in my wallet to remind me of that time that I needed to be told that money is the easiest thing God can give you, you know, and that is, you know, speaking of like solopreneur life, right? And building out your who you want to be in this world as a part of who you want your business, what you want your business to be in this world. You know, like sometimes you need those reminders too, but that's how we, you know, started hanging out with the random shooting in the gym. They were you shooting in the gym, Tatum, because
I love you.
Five team or five people team or however many people you got with you on your team now, but definitely. And I can say because I watched you go through it, and the whole time I'm like, Tatum, how are you taking care of yourself? And you're rolling your eyes at me the entire time. But I'm gonna just pat myself on the back because clearly you listened, and now the people that you are now scaling the business, right? Like you said, you're writing out job descriptions. You know what did not work for you, right? You know what had you crying in the corner. Like you know what you don't want to make other people feel that way, and that's what building out the company culture is, right? It's how do you want people to feel when they are working for you, and that includes you, right? Like you work for you too. So how do you want to feel when you come into this business, when you come into this establishment? You want to feel empowered and encouraged, and you want your boss to believe in you and trust that you can get the work done, right? You can get it done. It doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to be sitting at the desk staring at a screen from 9 to 5. You're probably not doing nothing for probably 6 of those 8 hours anyway, but staring at the screen. So I think that's a great example, and I understand why you get offended when people are like, well, you got a team, so I'm sure it's easy for you.
Rewind back to circa 2015, okay? But a major key to this conversation, though, for those people who are in the beginning stages, is that self-awareness. So I talk a lot about having a business meeting with God and all of that, but I think when it comes to self-awareness too, we should also just have a introspective moment or a business meeting, whatever it is you want to call it, within ourselves so that we can really understand who we are as people, as employees of this vision that God is giving you. Because especially in entrepreneurship, everybody is telling you what you should be doing. You ain't where you need to be because you need to do da 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 da. You still broke.
Too much. You're not investing in a $20,000 coach every year. That's why you're stuck. Cut it out. Cut it out. I know everybody can't see this. You have to watch the live so you can see my face. Cut it out.
Cut it out. Everybody's trying to tell you what to do, but it's really just you and God that knows the details of what needs to happen to build out this business. And then you utilize those resources as necessary to fuel the plan that He gave you to build out. Because a lot of times we're just trying to, a lot of people try to piece together other success to try to get a little piece of it. And that's just simply not how it works. But I say all that to say, when it comes to just really being introspective, what are some questions that people can ask themselves so that they can start thinking about and building out this culture?
That's a great question. So I call those moments for myself. They're my come to Jesus moments. Like, okay, Tish, get it together. That's my come to Jesus moments.
Mhm.
But I think some of the questions that you can ask yourself starting out are, first of all, figuring out your why, as cliche as that sounds, but why am I even here, right? Why am I even doing this, right? And why did God give me this vision, right? Kind of start thinking about your why, because your why is going to guide you throughout life, right? Your business might change. You might change your mind about what business you want. You might shift from one thing to the other, but if you understand your why, you understand the shifts that are occurring both within your life and within your business. It'll help it to make much more sense. So I think that's one of the most introspective things you can ask yourself is, what is my why? What is my purpose? Um, what is my gift, right? Because I know for me, my why, I'm a people person. I've started to say this because I don't really have an elevator pitch anymore or anything like that, but what I realized about myself is that I'm a people person. No matter what I'm doing, I do lots of different things all the time. I change my mind all the time about what I'm going to do, but when it comes down to it, everything that I do involves people being the best version of themselves, me supporting people and being the best version of themselves, me supporting people and finding a way to show up in this world that lets their light shine a little bit brighter, right? And so for me, my why is that, right? My why is God put me here to support people, right? That's the role that I play in this world, right? I don't have to be the, boss of all bosses. That doesn't even interest me. That's not my journey, right? So you have to start with that why, because then when things are shifting and when God is calling you to do something bigger or change or shift, and if it doesn't feel like it makes sense all from the very beginning, you're able to tie it back to, okay, what is my purpose here on earth? What is my why? So I think, you hear that all the time from people, figuring out your why, but I do think that's one of the most introspective things you can learn about yourself. And that's not something you just, you're journaling one day and it just comes to you and then you just know forever and ever. It might take you some time to start piecing together, especially if you're younger. You don't have a lot of life experiences yet. You might not know that yet, but if you start thinking about it and being intentional about, okay, I'm looking for my purpose, I'm looking for my why, that's going to help you build, right? Like that's going to be part of the foundation that you're building on, because now you know why God has you here and has you doing the things that you're doing. Sometimes things don't make sense, right? Like, well, why
Mhm.
would again, Tatum, I'm gonna use you as an example. Tatum said she wanted to start a podcast. People were like, huh? Right? Like, why would you give out all like free gems, right? Like, why would you do that? So before everybody else was on podcasts, Tatum decided she wanted to do a podcast. That might not make sense to everybody else, but being plugged into, okay, I know what I've been told, and I know that my purpose is to, you know, to shift people's mindsets, right? And then maybe that grew into, I need to start saving souls, right? Like that's not where this podcast started, but
Mhm.
that's where it went. And maybe that transition didn't always make sense, but once you figure out your why, you start to be like, okay, well, I don't have to listen to what they told me to do on Instagram to build a successful business, because I can do it the way that I know I'm supposed to do it, and here that I'm supposed to do it, because I know why I'm doing this. I know the purpose of what I'm doing this. So that's one of the like introspective questions. I think another question that you can ask yourself or you can ask others, um, from a life coach perspective, is what shows up when I show up. When I walk into a room, what shows up, right? So the what is the what when I show up in a room, people will say, you have like such a vibrant, you're so vibrant, or you're so, radiant, or whatever, people will say. But that's another introspective thing to ask yourself, because then when you're in your business and you realize that people not feeling like you being very radiant lately, right? Or vibrant, something shifted, you can check in with yourself. Okay, am I burning out? Am I overworking myself? Do I have compassion fatigue? What is happening with me that I'm not showing up how I normally show up, right? And I'm not walking into rooms and people feel what they usually feel when I show up in the room, right? Um,
Mhm.
I don't know why the song "Let Your Light Shine Before Men" came to my head. I don't know, Sunday school song, but it's that kind of feeling when you walk into the room. So that's another introspective question that you can ask yourself and you can ask other people. Ask the 5 people closest to you. When I walk in the room, what do you feel? Right? Like when I walk into the room, what shows up? So then you can kind of tap back into that in the long term when you feel yourself shifting. Let's see some other I have tons of introspective questions because that's all I do all the time. I'm a very introspective person, but um, I think being willing to check in with yourself is kind of where that starts. So the questions that I would ask myself may not relate to what you might want to ask yourself, but start um, thinking about who you are, why your why, and then why your business matters in this world, right? Like, why does it matter that your business exists? Why does it matter that you being the head of this business is is there, right? And so you can start kind of tying yourself back to something stronger than just you. Because once you're burned out or tired or exhausted, you need something that's going to keep you anchored. You're going to need something that's going to keep you going in your business and in this world.
Yeah, and I would even something that I thought about a lot early on is when building out the business is what does it take for me to just show up as my best and be happy? I don't think we talk enough about like what does it take for us to just be happy? And so for me, business makes me happy for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And but with that though, when I'm thinking about just like how I want to show up or the culture I want to create for myself, I'm thinking of like what do I need so that I can operate at my best? And so for me, one of those things is I need a clear mind.
Mm-hmm.
And because I need a clear mind to operate at my best, because I have ideas all the time. I'm very smart. I can take, you can give me an inch and I will create a whole something out of a very little bit. So my mind is one of my biggest assets and it's something that I have to protect. And anytime it's just a lot going on mentally, I'm not able to be as sharp as I usually am. And so that translated for me into the culture for my business is when we do things like marketing and creating all this content once a month, let's knock these things out where I got to come in and talk and pour. Like I can't go from being the talent to running a company and then being the mom. It's too much. It
Mm-hmm.
makes my mind cloudy. I get a headache, a migraine. It's not good for me. So it's like once a month, I'll put on that hat and let's knock these things out. It's staying offline as much as possible. What I need to be on it for. So I'm off. We'll maintain a presence there. That's the benefit of having a team now. I don't have to do all of that anymore. But, being offline is important. Not knowing what's going on in everybody's life, not knowing what's going on across the world at one time, not knowing the who slept with who and who mama cussed them out like that. It's too
It's
much.
exhausting.
It is exhausting. And you ain't even did nothing yet. Like it's crazy.
There's a Toni Morrison quote that I have on my screensaver that says, "You are your best thing," right? And so, what is your best? Is the other, like you said, what is your best? What does that look like, and what does that look like for you? Because truly, you are your best thing. You're the best that you can give each and every day.
Mhm.
So when you said that, that's the first thing that popped into my mind was you are your best thing, but like you're also saying here is, how do you figure out how you operate at your best? What does that look like for you? I'm the same way. I'm a multitasker in a sense that I can do things like I like to listen to something while I'm doing other things, or I'll have the TV on behind me, and I work well when like the TV is on and I'm doing work, right? That's how I multitask. Or when I'm cleaning, I like to have music on, whatever, right? but
Mhm.
I cannot move from like one type of task. Like if I'm having to use my thinking brain, and then you want me to come and speak to people for several hours, like I don't I can't maintain that switch very well. I don't code switch in that way very well. I can't
Mhm.
jump from being, like you said, I can't jump from being in the same, few hours or days. Usually it's like I can't be speaking for a long time and then you want me to think and figure something out and problem solve. My brain just doesn't work well that way with that kind of code switch. So I show up best when, okay, I've decided to dedicate this day to doing this type of task. If I'm speaking at an event or something like that, then I'm not gonna schedule myself to do a whole bunch of heavy thinking tasks that day where I have to like really be thoughtful and think things through and problem solve and those kind of things. I just, if I can help it, I just don't do that.
Mhm.
And vice versa. If I know that, I have this podcast tonight to do at 8 p.m., then I'm not going to put myself in a position where I need to be like, uh, working on something brand new and I have to start being creative and that kind of thing because I just can't code switch that way. So I think
Mhm.
that's a great point of understanding like what is your best and how does that show up for you and what doesn't work for you, right? And then, but again, some of that comes with experience because I feel like I don't know the age range of the listeners, but I feel like a lot of people are either maybe younger or maybe newer in their business, or even if you're established in your business, maybe new to thinking about things like this, right?
Mhm.
So being willing to be a beginner with all of this, right? Like being willing to be a beginner, being willing to realize that if you've never thought about these things before, it's not going to be overnight that you start figuring out what you want your business to look like, what you want your business culture to look like, what all of those things. It's not going to happen overnight. So give yourself that grace, give yourself that opportunity to be a beginner, to be curious, to figure out things, to learn how you want to build out your culture, to do some research, right? Like, I've never thought about company culture before. Let me look into some other companies that I enjoy, right?
Mhm.
Like I know that I get a good experience from this company. Maybe even seeing what their employees say about them, right? Like because we might get a good experience. Amazon, for instance, we get a good experience. We get our stuff in 2 days, but what's happening in that warehouse might
Mhm.
not be ideal, and we might not want to. We don't want to compare ourselves to Amazon if we don't want that back end Amazon kind of shenanigans, right?
The
So
chaos.
we don't want that chaos, even though on the front end as a customer, we get our packages quickly, we can return stuff quickly. What's happening, behind the scenes is important too. So think about those things and give yourself that opportunity to be curious, to, you know, research and kind of figure out what kind of company culture you do want to build. It's also useful to think about what you don't want to build within your business. And I mean, I think this applies to life too, right? You know what you want for your life, but there's power in knowing what you do not want for your life, right? You do not want that for your life. You do not want that for your business. There's a power in that too, because you can change some things so that you're not the person who's grinding and, not sleeping and you're up, you know, 18 out of 24 hours and you're working all 18 of those hours. That's not a, you got to think about your quality of life too. As even as a solopreneur, you do have to think about your quality of life. And I know when you're first starting, it's different because you're doing everything, but you do have to still consider your quality of life even as you are doing, a lot of the work as well.
Yeah. So one thing that came to mind, or that I hear, just even as we go back and forth, that's important as you figure these things out, because we're having a very just entry level discussion about it. Um, is that people need support,
Yes.
and and they also need to create boundaries around what's not feeding them, to be what's not good for them, who they're allowing in, that's not speaking life into their dreams, or that's not, they're not telling them to be nice to themselves and things of that nature. So how are people able to, in the beginning, just set these boundaries with people in their lives, and also where do they go to start to build the relationship for the support system they need?
Yeah, so boundaries are important, um, to say the very least. I think that's one of both in, I mean, from a self-care perspective, from just
Mhm.
a life perspective, boundaries are important. And so being able to first identify what your boundaries are, right? So I might be okay with you texting me at 10, 11 o'clock at night and Tatum is asleep, right? So it's like a boundary is my phone is going on do not disturb, and I will
Mhm.
respond to you in the morning. And I can either communicate that verbally, or you now iPhone, you it says phone is on sleep mode or focus mode or whatever. And you can
Mhm.
respect that boundary, right? It's going to be delivered quietly, and I'm not going to respond to it until my phone is no longer on do not disturb, right? So,
Mhm.
as like a very minute example of a boundary is even things like that, putting your phone on do not disturb when you literally don't want to be disturbed. Um, so so having those kind of figuring out what your boundaries are is important, and some of that comes from what doesn't make you feel at your best, what doesn't make you feel good, right? If your family members are always calling you, asking you for something all day long, blowing you up all day, that's probably a sign you need to set a boundary that I'm not accessible all the time anymore, right? Like
Mhm.
I used to be, when my life was different, I was able to answer my phone at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But right now, I'm working on something that's important, and because I want to get some sleep tonight, I need to work during these hours. So I will respond to you between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m.
Mhm.
Right? Or if you really want to talk, I'm free 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. We can talk in the morning. That can be our scheduled time, right? Like boundaries can look however you want. And one of my boundaries is I'm not a morning person. I'm like the opposite of Tatum. Like I'm not a morning person at all. I don't want to talk to anyone before 10 a.m. Like especially in a like thoughtful and I really have to think about what I'm saying and like you really want me to pour into you kind of way, not before 10 a.m. because I'm not even awake yet. Like my brain's not on yet until probably at about 9 a.m. And then I want that hour of just me being able to think for myself, about what I need to do, right? So
Mhm.
before 9 a.m., for sure, I'm not trying to talk to nobody. I might let you talk to me between 8:30 and 10 if I really care about you, right? And that's if I know that you respect my boundaries usually. But beyond that, that's one of my boundaries because I just know myself well enough to know that I'm not even thinking at my best before 9 or 10 a.m. I'm just not because I'm not a morning person. My brain fog is so very foggy until then. So kind of again goes back to self-awareness. What do you need and what works best for you to be at your best? And boundaries can look like that. Boundaries in your workplace can look like having those set business hours. If you say, I see a lot of people who have 9 to 5s, right? And they have a business that is flourishing. Too, their email says, I will get back to you within 48 hours, right? That's a boundary because I can't respond
Mhm.
to you immediately because I have other commitments. Um,
Mhm.
or even if it's not they have a 9 to 5, maybe they have a family, children. Maybe you have all of the above. Maybe you have a business, family, and you're working. So putting those kind of boundaries in place so people know what to expect from you. And part of that is people know what to expect when you set boundaries. And then if they push your boundaries, you have something to go back to and say, well, this is where I draw the line. I don't respond to emails on the weekends. I don't respond to work emails on the weekends. I'm not working. I'm not, I don't have a work, um, I don't have a work email on my phone, right? Because I don't want to think about work when I'm not working. If I'm working, I'm at my computer and I will respond to you from my computer, you know. So those kind of things where you're putting those boundaries into place are important. Those are just some like I guess examples you can use to start with, but you're gonna again, it's not sometimes it takes time to figure out what your boundaries are. I didn't realize for a long time that I'm not really that functional. I mean, I knew I wasn't that functional, but I didn't realize like that really took a lot out of me to like have people would call me and they just want to talk and chit chat at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm just like, I'm not in this conversation right now. Right. I can't connect with whatever you're saying because I'm thinking about like all the other things I have to do in the day and my brain is not really like turned on yet. So
Yeah. And I would say too, for people who are more passive, who find it hard to enforce those boundaries, because that was never an issue for me, but I realized like with BJ, he's such a nice guy. And like,
nice.
everybody always calling him for stuff and he's always saying yes because that's just who he is. I was like, no, you need to tell people no, you need to have boundaries. And he was like, how am I supposed to do that? Because it's his nature, like to give, like he wants to, even though he understands like he can't always do that. So we set up little controls. I'm like, okay, when you're on the phone, say, let me think about it and I'm gonna call you back. That gives you a second to kind of get out the hot seat. Then, even if you don't call them back, just send a text. Hey, I'm not gonna be able to do that, and just say, tell them no via text. It's easier to text sometimes than tell people on the phone or face to face. And then I'm like, if all else fails, blame me. Say Tatum said I can't do it. I'm cool with it. I'll take the heat. I don't care. But just even if you are somebody though who finds it hard to enforce those boundaries, I think that's something practical to do is just send a text. Tell them I'm going to call you back. Give yourself time to actually think about it before just responding in a moment or feeling like you have to. Don't over explain yourself when you tell somebody no. I remember my
No,
dad. Exactly. I was talking to my dad the other day. He was like, oh, can you call this golf course? He's on the golf course. Tells me to call another golf course to see if they have something that he wants. I said, no, I'm not your secretary. I have things to do. I'm not about to call no golf course. I can't talk. I'm on a golf course.
You talking to me?
Like you're talking to me right now. No, you could. I said, how about this? I'll talk to you later. Call them. I'm not doing that. And so he gets mad, of course, and he's like, oh, you don't ever want. That's fine. But I'm not about to spend the next 30 minutes trying to track down something for you. I got 30 minutes left of work for the nanny get off. I gotta go.
Like, right. And if I had time, I would do it. But obviously, if I'm saying no, it's because I can't do it. So it's. I feel like I used to be somewhat like that, somewhere in the middle ground of that. Like I'm not a super people pleaser, but also I didn't always have strong boundaries either. But I learned that people will respect your boundaries once you're consistent with them. I've communicated them to you. I'm consistent with them. You know what to expect from me. If you ask me on Tuesday to do XYZ and I said no, and you ask me on Wednesday, I'm going to say no again because that's not something I'm willing to do. And if it's something I am willing to do and I just can't do it right now, I will communicate that with you because I will say I can't do it this day at this time, but I am available on Thursday at 7 p.m. I will communicate that with you. I won't just say no. But if I said no with a period at the end, I meant that because I have been that person now for like 10 years. But because when you put no with a comma, you're like, no, but nobody hears that no. They hear but and hears whatever you're, no, but if you really need me to, I will, right? No, right? You can just put a period at the end. No, leave it at that. And if you are a more passive person and you have to find some, like Tim said, find some ways to practice that, practice your boundaries with safe people, right? You got friends, tell them what you're working on, that you're practicing this. So when they notice you saying yes to things you shouldn't say yes to, have them tag, hey, you told me that you didn't want to do that no more. Go back and tell them no, right? Have somebody to help keep you accountable to that and support you. You can say my life coach Tish or my friend Tish said I can't blah, blah, blah. Throw it on me. I don't care. But being able to say no and learning to say no is important. And I said this in another training I did a few weeks ago is telling someone no and learning to accept a no is powerful because when you are accepting a no, that gives you an opportunity to get support from people who actually have the capacity to help you in a way that is functional, right? Mm-hmm. So if I keep saying yes to you and I'm not even giving you my best when I say yes, right? I'm not doing you any favors. Mm-hmm. So when people learn, like telling someone no gives them an opportunity to find someone who actually has the capacity to do whatever they're asking you for, right? And so, I mean, that's how I see it. Is an opportunity to get some different support. And your back end of your question was about support, so I'll tie that in here. But finding support when you are a solopreneur early on in your business, I think that was your question, right? The second
Mm-hmm.
part of that. I think the thing you have to do, I, I can tell you what I did. Maybe I should put it that way. I can tell you what I did. When I decided that I wanted my life to be different, right? I decided, I think, 2014, that I was not enjoying my life. And I'm not that person. Like, I like to enjoy my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I decided that, I started looking for opportunities to do things that I did enjoy, right? So it didn't necessarily start off with business. So I started off with a blog and writing. So I would go to like writing workshops, and I met so many people at these workshops, like just random. I would just find them on like Eventbrite or like something
Mm-hmm.
like that at first. And I would go to like these writing workshops, and I would realize like, oh, I'm not that great of a writer. Like, I'm a good like academic writer, but I'm not like a creative writer. But that's okay, right? Like, everybody has their lane. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
good at like writing like I wrote for a magazine for a while. Like, I'm good at that kind of writing, but the creative book writing thing is not really my thing. But I met people who poured into me and helped me to see what I was good at, right? And gave me opportunities. And then that grew into, okay, I think I'm interested in business. So um, let me start going to these events that are entrepreneurship based business events, or business based, or empowerment based events. And so I started going, and I was sitting next to somebody, and I'm an introvert. You probably, I don't know if you can tell or not, but really I am an introvert. And I'm not a work the room kind of girl. You'll see me in a room, I'm only talking to probably three people, right? Everybody in the room might know who I am, but I'm talking to two or three people because that's just how I am. So I was sitting next to somebody, and whoever I was sitting next to, the two people, I just felt like God led me to wherever I was. So this is kind of probably why I did this. But the two people I was sitting next to, or the few people I was sitting around, I would talk to them and get to know them, exchange information, really get to know what they were up to, be curious about what what they have feel like, their dream and vision is, and really get to know them well. And then every time I went somewhere, I did that, right? So I would sit next to a few people, I would talk to, maybe two, three, four people in the room, and then talk to everybody. That's just not my nature. But I talked to people, and I talked to people in a way that was meaningful. I followed up with them, right? So if I met you, I would send you an email like, it was so great to meet you. Um, you know, Obviously we were at the same event, so we were likely have like minds, right? And if not, if I kind of felt like we didn't really, I would just say, it was nice to meet you. I hope, good luck on whatever your endeavor is. And that would be that. If I really felt like I connected with the person, I would follow up. I would follow them on social media. I would, support them in whatever they were doing. And that has been able to help me build a network of people who really have changed my life in lots of ways, right? And so when you I mean, you're not necessarily going out and be like, will you support me? Right? Like, will you be a support to my life and my business, right? But going out and finding people who have the same end goal as you, have the same drive or success, or even the people who have more of that than you do, right? Like, I hang out with a lot of people who have a lot more drive than I do, and that helps me to stay connected to what I'm going to do. Um, so I feel like if you are able to, I know with everything now is a little bit different, but be intentional about the places that you're going, and be intentional about at least meeting one person in the room that you're in, and really getting to know what their goals are. Support other people. I feel like when you support other people, people usually will support you back if it's genuine. Like, it's again, it's a long game, it's not a short game. So if you're trying to use somebody, it's never going to work out in your favor. It's just not. So be genuine with your support, be genuine with that, so that people will be genuine with you. Again, that's how I can only speak to how I have been able to build out my support and my network. I've always had really great friends. My friends didn't always understand what my vision was and what I was up to, and they were supportive in like a more cheerleader type of way. But so I had to start going out and find people who understood what I was trying to understand, or at least on the same path of trying to understand what I was trying to understand. So I think
That's good. I think that's some good advice because you know everybody.
I know a lot of people now, but and that's how honestly, people are like, you know everybody, and I'm like, I promise you, it wasn't because I was like working the room. I literally was sitting next to people for years. I've done it I still do it like for years. I'll sit next to somebody, I get to know them, I follow up with them, I talk with them. I just got asked to speak at an event in a couple of weeks, and was somebody that I was a graduate assistant in college, and she was a freshman. Her dad's the pastor at the church I used to attend at home. And I've been out of grad school for 8 years almost. And she thought of me because we already had a relationship. She's been following me ever since. I've been supportive of her. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you have to think long term. Like you can't be the person. Do not be my biggest advice is who not to be, and who not to be is a person who is going out seeking people to use them, right? And to drain them of their knowledge and their ability, or drain them, picking their brain to death, right?
Mm.
You don't want to be that person. You want to be the person who is giving genuine support, and people will give you genuine support as well.
Yes. Well, thank you, Tish.
You're welcome. I'm like, it's getting late, girl. I know you ready for
Oh,
bed.
listen, I'm gonna cut on that kettle when we're done and pour up my tea. I got me a nice little book that has nothing to do with business or nothing that I can
That's
read
important.
and take my mind off of anything, really. And I'm gonna go to bed. Okay. Because one thing I'm going to do is go to bed. Well, tell everybody where they can find you if they want to talk to you about just how they can work with you on building out their company culture. How can they reach you? All that good stuff.
Yep. So on social media, on Instagram, I'm at Latisha Carr, just my name. And my website is latishacarr.com. So Google Latisha Carr, you'll find me. But latishacarr.com, at Latisha Carr on Instagram. My podcast, The Refill, I have probably, I think, 60 some episodes that if you just want to kind of figure out how to pour into yourself, the podcast is The Refill with Latisha Carr. So again, Latisha Carr. If you're looking for me, that's how to find me.
Not Latisha, Latisha.
Latisha, also known as Tish, but if you're looking for me, it's Latisha.
Well, thank you guys that are live here on YouTube for tuning in. Thank you, everybody who is listening. That wraps up another episode of the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast, and I will talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Hold on.